Shāriputra, recognized as the foremost in wisdom among the Buddha's 10 chief disciples, was said to have mastered the four Vedas by the age of 7. By the time he was 16, he had become proficient in all worldly fields of knowledge and could speak with remarkable ease and clarity. He is remembered as one of the wisest sages in the history of the spiritual path. Inside the monastery, soft curls of incense smoke drifted through the air. Golden sunlight streamed through the window and fell upon the Buddha. Suddenly, Shariputra rose and bowed to the teacher, asking a question that stunned the monks gathered there. Master, you often guide us to be free from attachment, yet you also tell all beings to take refuge in the three jewels. Don't these two teachings contradict each other? His question was like a giant stone tossed into the still surface of a lake, sending ripples of confusion throughout the group. The monks looked at one another, whispering, struggling to understand. Being free from any notion of a self appears to be the doorway to liberation, but taking refuge in the three jewels seems to imply reliance on something. How could these two ideas possibly connect? The Buddha heard Shariputra's question and smiled gently. His gaze was radiant and all-knowing. He said in a calm voice, "Excellent, Shariputra. That is indeed a profound question, pointing directly to a key element of practice. However, before addressing it, I want to ask you something. Yesterday, when you went into town, did you experience anything that touched your heart?" Shariputra thought for a moment and replied, "Master, yesterday I went into the city and saw an elderly woman struggling to walk. She was in such great pain that every step felt like a knife cutting into her. She told me she had been suffering from a foot ailment for many years. She asked if, according to the teachings on letting go, she should simply ignore her pain and leave it untreated." The Buddha nodded and asked, "And what did you say to her?" Shariputra answered, "I told her that letting go of attachment does not mean giving up on treatment. Pain is the result, while the illness is the cause. If the cause is not addressed, the pain will never end. I advised her to find proper medical care so she could lessen her suffering." The Buddha's eyes shone with approval. "In your view, does that advice conflict with the teaching to be free of self-attachment?" Shariputra paused and then shook his head. "No, it does not. Seeking treatment is meant to reduce suffering, not to fixate on it. Refusing help just because we fear attachment would be like refusing to eat because we fear choking. It would defeat the purpose." The Buddha continued, "Do you believe that the old woman should trust her doctor and follow the doctor's instructions?" Shariputra answered without hesitation, "Yes, of course. Without trusting the doctor, how could she receive proper care? Without following the doctor's guidance, how could she expect her illness to heal?" The moment he finished speaking, an insight flashed across Shariputra's face. He felt he grasped the Buddha's intention, but also sensed a deeper layer of meaning beneath his initial understanding. Just then, a young novice raised his hand and said, "Honored teacher, I have a question too. Like Shariputra said, the elderly woman needs to believe in the doctor to be cured, but doctors are human and can make mistakes. Isn't that form of trust also a kind of attachment? If the doctor makes a wrong judgment, wouldn't that worsen her condition?" A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the Bodhi tree outside, filling the air with a soft, soothing sound. The Buddha turned his compassionate gaze on the novice and replied, "That is an excellent question. It reminds me of an old story about a young man named Agasha. When the Buddha told stories of worldly matters, everyone listened closely, knowing he always chose them to illustrate profound truths. Agasha was born into an impoverished family, but was gifted with a keen mind and great diligence. He longed to change his destiny, so he traveled far and wide, seeking out various teachers. However, the teachers he met had widely different levels of skill. Some were only interested in fame and personal gain, not genuine wisdom. Disappointed and confused, Agasha began to doubt that study could truly improve his life. One day he encountered a true sage, a hermit who lived in the forest. This sage explained that while knowledge is valuable, the ability to discern truth is even more important. The sage taught him never to trust anyone blindly, not even a teacher, and to use his own insight to judge carefully. The sage also said that real knowledge doesn't come solely from books, but from a profound awakening within. Agasha took these words deeply to heart. He reflected on how he had relied entirely on teachers in the past, barely using his own capacity for thought. He began to apply his own wisdom, striving to understand and discern each lesson he came across. Slowly, he realized that real learning is not just rote memorization, but an active process of integrating and applying knowledge in practical, flexible ways. After diligent effort, Agasha experienced tremendous growth. Not only did he acquire a wide range of knowledge, he also learned to think for himself and distinguish right from wrong. He went on to become a renowned scholar who made great contributions to society. This story shows us that while trust matters, blind trust can lead us astray. We must learn to use our own wisdom to question and reflect, so we do not end up misled. At the same time, we need to trust our inner capacity to discover what is true. When the Buddha finished telling the story, he looked back at the novice and asked, "What have you learned from Agasha's experience?" The novice reflected for a moment, then replied, "I see that trust requires wisdom and discernment. We can't trust anyone recklessly, including doctors. We have to use our own understanding to make judgments. At the same time, we must believe in our own ability to find truth." The Buddha nodded in affirmation. Then he said, "Now let me share another story about a wealthy merchant. This merchant possessed immense riches, yet he was consumed by worry day and night. He feared thieves would steal his fortune, so he kept his money hidden under his bed, sleeping literally on top of gold and silver. He became trapped by ceaseless suspicion and could hardly rest. One day he heard about a local treasury renowned for its honesty and reliability. Determined to free himself from his daily fears, he deposited his assets there for safekeeping. As a result, he was finally able to sleep well at night without worrying about being robbed. The novice asked, "Master, this merchant may have stopped worrying about thieves, but he still relies on the treasury. He's still attached to his wealth, isn't he? Isn't that just replacing one form of attachment with another?" The Buddha's voice remained gentle, like clear, flowing water. "So tell me, did the merchant become more anxious or more at peace? When he slept on his valuables, he was endlessly on edge. Was that freedom or was it captivity? When he entrusted them to the treasury, he no longer lived in fear. Isn't that closer to being at ease? Which way of living is nearer to liberation?" Silence fell among the monks as they pondered this. Each thought about their own path of practice in the nature of attachment. A light appeared in Shāriputra's eyes as though he had grasped a crucial thread of insight. He wanted to speak but felt he needed more time to articulate what he was realizing. The Buddha gently raised his hand to pause Shāriputra, then said, "Before you share your insight, I want to ask everyone here, when you hear the story of the merchant, what comes to mind? What do you understand from it?" A senior monk spoke first. "I see that, although the merchant still cares about his wealth, he shifted how he manages it. Once he trusted the treasury, his mind found some measure of freedom. Maybe certain actions look like attachments on the surface, but they can also mark the beginning of letting go. Some choices that may seem like hindrances at first can actually guide us toward release." The Buddha gave a slight nod and turned to Shāriputra, encouraging him to delve deeper. Shariputra's face showed a flicker of realization, but he also sensed this teaching went beyond his current understanding. Just then, another question stirred within him, prompting him to bow and speak. "Master, is there a deeper meaning here? Trusting the treasury and taking refuge in the three jewels, letting go of wealth and practicing freedom from self, aren't these connected in some mysterious way? Is taking refuge in the three jewels actually the first step toward letting go completely? And is this freedom from self truly beyond our reach?" The Buddha's gaze grew vast, like a night sky full of stars. With a calm voice, he said, "Yes, Shariputra. There is indeed a profound mystery linking the practice of taking refuge in the realization of freedom from self. This mystery touches on the essence of the path and the core of liberation. Let's continue with the merchant's story. Do you think that by depositing his wealth, the merchant gave up all attachment to money? Or might he still be concerned about how the treasury is managed, worried it could fail, or anxious about whether his fortunes are truly safe? He changed his strategy. But is that change meaningless? Is it a step forward or a step backward? Is it a step toward freedom or a new kind of bondage? Shāriputra replied, Master, I believe it is a step forward. The merchant may still be concerned about his wealth, but he has learned to trust, to let go, and to rely on others' support. If he never even took that first step, how could he eventually learn to release attachment fully and find lasting peace? The Buddha smiled, acknowledging the insight. Precisely. When beings are caught in the ocean of suffering, weighed down by worries, how can they simply drop everything in an instant and discover perfect freedom? That would be like telling someone who has never climbed a mountain to reach the summit in a single leap. It's impossible. Taking refuge in the three jewels is the first step toward genuine freedom. It's like the merchant's decision to trust the treasury. Although it may seem like another form of attachment, in truth it is the gateway to learning how to trust wisely and let go. By taking refuge, living beings have the chance to learn the value of the teachings, receive help from the community of practitioners, and grow in understanding. Over time, this leads them closer to the goal of true release. A younger monk then spoke up, So it's like stepping onto a boat to cross a wide river. Ultimately, you must leave the boat behind when you reach the far shore, but you need it first. Without the boat, how can you ever make it to the other side? Exactly, said the Buddha. Taking refuge is that boat for sentient beings. It carries you across the sea of suffering. Once you reach liberation, you can put the boat aside. Until then, it's indispensable. And that is how taking refuge and freedom from self connect with each other. Shariputra rose and placed his palms together respectfully. Master, now I see. Freedom from self is the ultimate goal, and taking refuge is part of the path. They appear contradictory, but are truly one. Just like the elderly woman who trusts the doctor not out of fixation on her pain, but to overcome it, we take refuge in the three jewels not to become dependent, but to move toward genuine freedom. The Buddha answered gently, not only that, there is an even deeper level of meaning. When you truly understand the act of taking refuge, you will realize that it is, in itself, a profound practice of letting go. Genuine refuge is not clinging to outer forms, but awakening to truth, not seeking dependence outside, but discovering an inner clarity. When you take refuge sincerely, you let go of self-centeredness, attachments, and illusions. You entrust yourself to the Buddha, to the teachings, and to the community in a way that awakens your own inherent wisdom. In this sense, refuge and freedom from self are two sides of the same coin. To take refuge in the Buddha is not to worship an external figure. It's to recognize your own capacity for clarity, compassion, and insight. By awakening that potential, you shine a light on your mind. To take refuge in the teachings is not to fixate on the words of the text, but to see how they guide you toward release. The teachings show you how to free yourself from entanglements, to open the door to wisdom, and to follow a practical path to liberation. To take refuge in the community is not about clinging to rules or rituals, but about joining others who walk the path. You support each other in sincerity, learn from one another, and grow together toward freedom. In other words, this kind of refuge is already the embodiment of letting go. There is no separate self in it, no rigid clinging. There is only openness, clarity, and the movement toward complete liberation. Shariputra's face lit up with understanding. So letting go isn't about throwing everything away at once, nor is taking refuge about blind dependence on outer forms. True refuge is about awakening our own insight. True letting go happens when we recognize our deeper nature. These two ideas seem opposite, but actually support each other. Like two wings of a bird, both are needed to fly freely. The Buddha nodded. Exactly. It's like a wave in the ocean. The wave may appear to rise and fall as though separate, yet it never actually exists apart from the ocean. The wave is the ocean. The ocean is the wave. In the same way, taking refuge may seem like a new attachment, but genuine refuge leads to freedom from the idea of a permanent self. Because in true refuge, there is no self-centered thinking left. Only the realization that all is interconnected in a vast, boundless reality. In that state, there is nothing to cling to. There is only clarity, warmth, and liberation. Sunlight streamed in as the wind gently stirred the leaves outside, their delicate rustling echoing softly in the stillness. Everyone in the monastery sat immersed in deep thought, finally understanding the relationship between taking refuge and letting go, seeing for themselves the heart of the path. They realized that taking refuge and freedom from self are like climbing a mountain and then enjoying the view. You must climb step by step to reach that panoramic vantage point. Taking refuge is the climb. Freedom from self is the summit. Without the journey, there is no arrival. Suddenly, the young novice asked, Master, does this mean we shouldn't rush toward the state of no self right away, but rather begin with taking refuge, practicing diligently, and moving forward one step at a time? The Buddha answered with kind eyes. Indeed. Think of a farmer planting crops. The field must go through the phases of sowing, growth, and harvest. You rely on sunlight, water, and good soil. Only then can you finally enjoy the fruit. Taking refuge is like that seed you plant and nurture. Through sincere practice, you inch closer to true freedom. It's not a contradiction. It's simply the road every seeker must walk. As long as you stay steadfast, you will one day let go of every attachment and awaken to the highest wisdom. The Buddha's words were like cool water, quenching the monks' thirst for understanding. They felt as though their eyes had been opened. A profound joy arose in their hearts. They stood and bowed deeply to the Buddha, filled with gratitude. Within the walls of that peaceful monastery, the echoes of their reverence rang out and lingered, carrying the promise of awakening far into the distance.